All right, welcome back to the channel, you guys. Today is my recap of week 4 mini cut. I've got my spreadsheet pulled up here for you guys so I could remember to touch on all the points that I wanted to touch on because this was a very unusual week. So let's get right into it. First things first, so overall weight has dropped, which is the goal of the mini cut. I did still see some fat loss this past week. So when you look at the previous week, week 3, I ended the week with an average weight of 157.8. I ended last week, the week of week 4, my average was 155. And that was across 6 readings. I did not do a measurement on Sunday. I think because we were filming something on Sunday, early morning time. So average weight for the week dropped almost 3 pounds. So really interesting, honestly, to observe this because this mini cut is very different than when I am actually prepping for competition in the sense that I feel like it's maybe not as aggressive as I typically would be. I'm just kind of reflecting and comparing in my mind right now, but from where I sit today, I feel like it's not as aggressive, but my weight is definitely coming down quite nicely. Could be from a variety of things. I could speculate, and maybe at the end of this mini cut, I will have more answers on that one, but 155, my goal is really, I'm thinking I want to get to about 152, potentially a little bit lower, but I think 152 is going to end up being the sweet spot. Now, there was a day last week that I did drop, basically started the week at 157, and by Thursday, I dropped to 153. That is a large drop. So going into that week, even the weekend before, I was feeling really run down. And I did mention this in the last video. That feeling continued on into Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I did report that to my coach immediately because I know the symptoms of when you're about to have a big weight drop. Now, there's no science on this, you guys. This is just experience. If you're following your plan to a T and doing all the things, it's not uncommon for your weight to kind of stay steady, maybe even jump up a little bit, but pretty much steady. And you totally feel like crap, like not quite sick, but just really, I don't even know how else to describe it, frankly. If you've done a fitness competition, you might relate to this. And then one morning you'll wake up and you have this weight drop, and it could be 2 pounds, 3 pounds, 4 pounds, like a big drop, like almost overnight. It's sort of like built up and then it drops. And so I did sort of expect to see that. And again, my weight just kept going down. So I let my coach know. He had me send another set of pictures that same week. We decided to have a refeed meal. So I did have sushi for my refeed meal, which was just fine. I also had pizza last week too, so that was a little off plan. And other than that, macros stayed the same. We didn't make any other major changes for last week, but my weight continued to stay right around that 155. So I ended the week, even with the refeed meal, at 155. Now, here's what's really interesting is because my energy was so crappy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I actually didn't train on Monday or Tuesday. Wednesday, I sucked it up and I went to the gym with Brad, and he and I did a leg workout together. I ended up taking Thursday and Friday off, and then I trained Saturday, and I didn't train on Sunday. So I only got 2 lifting sessions in last week. I did all of my cardio and my steps, and when I look across my spreadsheet here, my calorie burn, my time spent during cardio, my calorie burn during cardio, and my steps, pretty much the same across the board as the previous week, but my training dipped down, and my active calories for my resistance training on week 3 was about just under 1,400, and in week 4 it was just under 900, so about a 500 calorie difference from the weight training active calories. Not the most perfect week in terms of training, and I don't know if you're watching this, if that is surprising to you. I get a lot of comments from people who think I train 6 or 7 days a week, that my sessions are 2 hours long, I never miss a workout, that kind of stuff. And to be honest, in my early days, I didn't miss a workout. And, if something was on my plan, it got done. And if that even meant that I was doing cardio at like 10 p.m. at night, it got done. I was very, very, very on it with everything. All I can say is now I'm more than 15 years into my journey. I've maintained my weight. I've built a good amount of muscle tissue over the years, that I have a lot more sort of in my fitness bank account, so to speak, where having a week that's less than perfect doesn't impact my progress quite as much as it may have if I was a beginner, if I was in my first several years. I really equate a lot of stuff in fitness like your financial blueprint. In those early days of saving, investing, and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot less wiggle room that you have, and you can't really withdraw too much from those accounts. Later years, and that's the point, right? Later years, you can take out more because you put so much in and the thing is sort of compounded over time. I think fitness is very similar. Our bodies work very, very similar to that. I wanted to get that point across because I don't want somebody watching this, if you're a beginner, thinking like, oh yeah, it's totally okay if I just miss workouts here and there and it's all gonna be fine. I wouldn't be that flippant, and certainly that's not how I wanted the week to go. But I really was thinking I was going to get all my sessions in later in the week, but it just didn't work out that way. I really want to make a solid effort this week to get my sessions in and, continue on this fat loss phase. Okay, so for this coming week, I did do that refeed meal. We did not make any updates to my macros for the coming week. Okay, so going into week 5, we are not making any changes to my macros. I had that refeed meal and then it's right back on plan. Just looking at the macros again, it's the same as the previous week. If you are just getting up to speed on this whole mini cut thing, this is 4 weeks completed. We've only made one adjustment to my macros, and I've had one now refeed meal. I did have one off weekend where technically it was not a planned refeed, but I did have some off meals over the course of this time period, but still making progress. So for week 5, the macros are going to be training days. It's 1785 calories, so it's roughly 165 protein, 190 carbs, 40 fats. And then my off days are about 1655 calories, 165 protein, 170 carbs, and about 35 fats. So again, these are rough numbers. I do follow a meal plan and I will make substitutions to some of the items here and there, but for the most part, it's a meal plan. And when you track the meal plan in a food tracker, the numbers don't always perfectly align because you literally have to pick the same item, each person, in the same app to make it perfectly aligned. Otherwise, I've literally done this little experiment with my clients. I had everyone on a Zoom call one time and I said, everyone go to your food tracking app and pick 4 ounces of chicken or 100 grams of chicken. Tell me what the macros are. And I think across 18 people, or whoever was on the call, pretty much everybody had a different number for what the macros were. So again, it doesn't matter what you're tracking as long as you track that number consistently. So if you track 100 grams of chicken and these are the numbers it spits out for you, and next week you track it, it's the same item, and if my coach tells me to reduce it to hypothetically 80 grams of chicken, I would just reduce that same weighed portion. I would reduce it in my food tracking, and we know it's less food, period. So don't overcomplicate things. I try not to oscillate between macros and meal plan. If I commit to a meal plan for a duration of a fat loss phase or a build phase, I stick with that thing for the most part. So again, this coming week, I'm going to aim for 4 sessions of resistance training. I have glutes, a general leg day, a general upper body day, and then a more delt arms focused day. And then if I can do a 5th day, I will do like a full body and just touch up on everything. Cardio is going to stay about the same, so I'm doing about 40 minutes at the moment, 5 days a week. So not even 7 days a week, you guys. It's nothing crazy. And then my step goal, I'm aiming for around 8,000 to 10,000 steps. Some days that doesn't happen, but I am keeping track of my daily step average. I have been increasing week to week, except for these last 2 weeks has been about the same. So something to work on for this coming week. I just have it in my mind that I want to just do a little bit more to keep the fat burning going. And we are traveling today. We're actually, if you guys notice, I'm in a different environment. We're in San Diego for the week. We just decided to do a little road trip with the dogs and get them out. So I'm anticipating getting a lot of steps in today, tomorrow, and Thursday. And we're gonna train at a gym that I used to train at when I lived here. So I'm excited for that. I'm gonna film a couple of videos there as well. And yeah, it's just a nice summer family vacay for us. Nothing super unusual with my food. I did bring a cooler with me with some of my MegaFit meals, with some protein pancakes that I made in advance for my breakfast. And then I'm also very familiar with the area that we are living or that we're staying in. So because I literally used to live across the streets. So I'm very familiar with food options that are available to me. And if I need to modify things for like dinner or something like that, I'm good to go. All right, so moving on to, I wanted to answer some of the questions that I got on my Instagram this past week. So these are the Q&A portion of this video. I had such great questions. I picked a handful of my favorites that I wanted to cover for you guys. So question number one is, do I ever have cravings and how do I deal with them? That's kind of a tricky question for me, to be honest, because I feel like I only really have cravings when my body fat gets really, really low. And I notice that I crave like legit cravings, not emotional cravings where, you know, you're stressed out and you're like doing laps around the kitchen islands looking for stuff, like opening up the drawers. That happens. I think there's a very big distinction between like an emotional trigger that makes you want to go eat something versus an actual craving. I noticed that I actually have cravings around when my body fat gets lower because the body is seeking out usually more fats. So things that have higher fats in it, I'll crave like quite literally butter, which is really weird. Sometimes I get this like trigger where it's like I can tell my body wants carbs. And then I also have times during the month, I think it's like a cyclical thing where I really just want lean protein sources. And then I'll have a week where like steak twice a day just sounds amazing to me, or like salmon. And then I have another week where I don't even want to look at steak. So I think that is legit the body telling you the nutrients that it needs and a legit craving. Versus on a daily basis, I think a lot of people, and myself included, we have emotional triggers, whether it is a stressful situation that happened at work or with family or something like that, or you're just on. Like you're on all day. I tell my clients this, you can be on doing stuff, answering questions, making decisions, being responsible for people and things, and then the day ends and you're like, and you're just sort of like coming down from all of this stuff, and nothing bad necessarily has to even happen. You're just like coming down from it. So that's the time that I notice my body, I do the lap around the kitchen. So usually what I try to do is get out of the kitchen, first of all, go for a walk, go do something to help to bring like my emotions, maybe my cortisol levels, just back to homeostasis. I have been toying around actually this past week with doing my walk. Instead of doing it in the morning time, I do my walk after work. So like around 7 o'clock, I'll get on the treadmill and I actually have zero cravings and don't deal with that at all. Sometimes I'll have like a diet soda if I feel like I want a little something sweet. And then usually around that time, it's also time for me to have dinner. So I'll just skip right into my dinner. And then again, if there's something that I'm really, really wanting, I'll let myself have like a little bit. It's like a little chocolate square. I have really good self-control though. I'll say that. I do have friends who actually, Brad over here, my fiance, if there's a chocolate bar, he can eat the whole thing. If you give me a chocolate bar, I can have 2 squares and I'm totally fine. So I think that everybody has their thing. If that's a downfall for you, I would not keep chocolate bars in the house. Just And I've done that from time to time. If I'm in prep and I know there's something that I tend to keep kind of like gravitating towards, I just stop buying it and make it easy for myself. So how I deal with cravings, that's pretty much it. My advice would just be, replace the pattern of being in the kitchen, go somewhere else, go do something else, call a friend, whatever. Or it might be time for you to have your next meal, and I would just make sure you eat something or plan a meal around that time where you have that craving trigger. Okay, question. What to do when your energy is low in a fat loss phase? So first of all, expect that your energy is going to be low at some point. You're going to have days where you're in a deficit and you totally feel fine, and then you have days where you feel really low. Some caffeine, yes, can help. Like I'm sitting over here with my double espresso. Caffeine can help. Sometimes I'll do an energy drink, but I do try not to have too much of that in a day. I do feel like I am more sensitive to those things, especially as I've gotten older. Honestly, a lot of people don't want to hear this. Take a nap. As if you can go take a nap or go to bed early, try to prioritize sleep on the days that you can. I think that's really a big key, because taking on a fat loss phase it's a responsibility, especially if you are wanting to see a certain pace of fat loss. Right, there's a range. I discussed this in the previous video. There's a range that is acceptable for fat loss, and if you're on the lower end of the range, you're going to feel it's going to be a little bit slower, so to speak, but you're not going to have all of the dieting symptoms that you might have if you're going at a faster pace. And you can go at a reasonable, faster pace, but the caveat to that is you are responsible for dealing with the effects of that. It's no one's fault, it's just the way that it is. And some of the effects of that is going to be fatigue, brain fog, feeling like you need to take a nap, more cravings, and potentially like more weakness or less strength in the gym. That's part of dieting. It's also why I say in a dieting phase, you want to be like a tornado. You want to get in and get the hell out in a reasonable amount of time. You don't want to nest in a dieting phase. Women like to nest. Do not nest. Do not get comfortable in a dieting phase. My best advice is to prioritize your sleep and recovery. And this is where people make sacrifices. It might mean saying no to that Friday night girls' night. It might mean, not doing that extra activity on Saturday afternoon. Just prioritize your rest. Realize that, especially if you're somebody who really does need to lose weight for health reasons, these sacrifices it's a short period of time that you have to do this thing for a long-term benefit. How much of a surplus do you need to build muscle? This is such an interesting question because it does vary from person to person. If you are a beginner, for some people, they don't even need to be in a surplus, right? If you are brand new to resistance training and brand new to following a diet, you can be basically at maintenance. Some people can even be in a deficit and build muscle because they're introducing this new stimulus, weight training, and the body's going to respond for a period of time up to, I think the studies show about up to a year, but again, what also happens at year 1 and year 2 is if you're paying attention and you're really working on your weight training skills, you become a better lifter. So there's even this sort of phenomenon where in that year 2, year 3, you can continue to build even more muscle because you're becoming more proficient and executing the moves better. The surplus in a beginner it can be a big range. It doesn't necessarily even need to be a surplus for some people. I have a lot of clients that come in and we see them recomp with their initial macros without even being in build macros. It probably takes us, we maximize that before we have to start increasing, and it could be 6 months until they're actually at a true surplus, which is really cool because you can see their body changing. And it sounds great to be in a surplus until you have to be in a surplus all the time. A lot of women don't want to eat more food, and it does get to a place where they're like, this is like work. I have to remember to eat. I have to like go out of my way. And this is also why you see some of the top bodybuilders. I mean, it's a struggle for some of them to get, top bodybuilders are, eating, 5, 6, 7,000 calories a day. Now, as a female, you probably won't be like that, but it will feel, if you're used to eating 1,500 calories or even 2,000 calories, and you have to go to 3,000 every day, that's work. So if you can see some body recomposition and muscle gain in a more comfortable place, that's where you want to be. The amount of surplus that you need to be is really going to be relative to your training age, your proficiency, weight training, your body type. I don't think age honestly makes that big of a difference in terms of how much of a surplus you need to be in. It's more about how you train, how often you train, your skill level, your body type. You know, people want a very specific number. How many calories more do I need? This is a great one. This is such a great question. Okay. How to adjust your training when you no longer want to add muscle. And so this is actually the place that I'm sitting in right now, not really wanting to build a ton of muscle. And that's great. It's such a great question because people have asked me, you know, do you still progressive overload? And the answer is yes. I do still do progressive overload because the body is still declining and you're sort of counterbalancing that decline. So if you're not doing something to at least get a very comparable stimulus, you're probably going to lose muscle. You're going to see muscle wasting. And the best way to really track that is to track your stats, track your photos. I see, again, if you're a leaner body person, you're not even going to see the numbers on the scale or the measurements change so much because we're talking centimeters, not inches. So the best way to see if you're gaining, losing muscle when you're leaner is photos and the occasional DEXA scan. But again, I think photos are more practical. And if you like how you look, you're good to go, right? And also comparing from previous looks to see, am I sustaining or am I going backwards? So how to adjust your training can be a variety of ways. Overall, bringing down your overall training volume. You could reduce your frequency. I know girls who maybe they've gotten to a place where they didn't want to build upper body anymore, and so their training split. Maybe they went to 1 day a week of upper body. I've seen them do every other week, maybe 3 sessions a month of upper body, depending on the body parts. So reducing your frequency in general, or just reducing your number of sets per week. So there's a couple different ways you could slice it, but the overall concept is number one, reducing the volume. So rather than having an entire, again, say it was upper body, instead of having an entire back day, you might just do 2 exercises for back, 6 sets total, something like that, 6 to 8 sets. Or again, I've seen girls who maybe even didn't mind maybe detuning a little bit. And so they might train that body part every other week or every 10 days, something like that. So there's a couple different ways to do it. And then again, if you're like, I want to lose the muscle altogether, you would just honestly just stop training, frankly. That's also going to be, I mentioned body type before in the last question. Body type is also going to determine like what is needed here. Some people, their bodies put on muscle fairly easily and they want to grow. Simply saying, okay, I'm not going to do as many sets or I'm not going to go as hard might not be enough. They might really have to reduce the frequency. I think step 1 is reducing the total number of exercises that you do, maybe going from 2 or 3 days a week, combining it to full like 1 session for that body parts or body parts together, or going down to less times per month. And then the last question that I'm going to answer for today is, how does my morning routine differ from evening training? And honestly, I can't say it changes a whole lot. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I do specifically differently, and there really isn't anything. My post-workout meal will obviously get shifted. If I train in the evening, it's not like I don't avoid carbs. It's just I have my carbs in the evening time. But my training itself doesn't change a whole lot. It's interesting to see how your energy levels are different from a morning session to an evening session. I've had times where my energy was so much better by doing an afternoon session, even though like I don't necessarily love training later in the day anymore, but did notice that I just overall had more energy in the session. And likely I had more food in my system. I do know a lot of bodybuilders, male bodybuilders at least, who will not train unless they have several meals first, especially if you're trying to build. You want to be fueling the body with the nutrients and the energy as much as possible to get into the gym and really produce the amount of force and really push yourself through the sessions. So I know somebody who's building, they might even prefer evening sessions purely for that reason. Maybe it might not be their personal preference, but sometimes when you have a specific goal, whether it's building or fat loss, it might be in your best interest to move things around to suit your energy availability. But yeah, nothing really changes a whole lot. If I train in the morning time, I always make sure I have at least a liter of water before I train. I have a good meal before I lift, so I at least have breakfast. I don't think I ever trained fasted. Even when I very first started, I might do cardio fasted, but I would always eat something and then train. Like I'd bring a meal with me, like overnight oats or my protein pancakes. I do my cardio, eat my oats, my protein pancake real quick, like in the locker room, and go back out to the floor and do my lifting session and then have my post-workout. But I pretty much would never train, even in a fat loss phase, I would never really train fasted. Yeah, nothing really changes for me. I think it's just how my energy levels are. And I do think that when I'm in a build, I like to have a couple meals in my system before training. And then when I'm cutting, initially I don't care so much, but as I get lower into a deficit, I do like to have a couple meals in because my energy is just really low. So it's like I'm trying to get whatever calories I have into my system so I can train. And so a lot of times I'll end up lifting, I'll do work in the morning half of the day and then late morning, midday lift, and then finish my work later. So it's sometimes it really is dependent on like my mental capacity and like making sure that I have the energy available to do everything that I need to do in a day. Lots of things to consider whether you are building or cutting. That is all the questions I'm going to answer for today. These were such great questions. I hope you guys received some value from this video, and certainly if you have any questions on my mini cuts, on these topics that I just covered, go ahead and drop them in the comments. And if you guys like this video, let me know. And yeah, I will see you guys next week for my week 5 update.